Hello out there, I'm Lindsey Fyfe. I'm an artist here in Hartford, and today I'm going to be doing a demo of how to paint some lemons. You can use craft paint, acrylic. I'm using a gouache, which is like an opaque watercolor. And you just need a brush, some paint colors, and a surface like a small canvas or a thick piece of paper, water, and somewhere sunny to paint to capture the natural light. This is my kitchen here. Okay, here we go. My painting is sped up just so you can kind of see the results quicker, but I'm mixing up a purple just with a little bit of red to warm it up. And I'm going to sketch in my underpainting, which is something that will give you your guidelines for your composition and your basic forms that you want to depict. So I'm going to sketch in my 2 lemon forms and a small horizon line. You want to think hard about your composition because you can't really change it too much once you commit to it. And for visual intrigue, rather than putting my lemons right in the middle, I'm going to have the one on the right side go off the edge a little bit to give the sensation that these lemons are in a real space. So I'm sketching in just the basic outlines that I see and kind of readjusting as I go if I see little mistakes. I'm not worried too much about super precise. I'm really just trying to capture the basic energy of these forms. Still just sketching in the basic lines. And this would work with really any form you wanted to paint. I see dark shadows cast from the lemons, so I am sketching those in basically as big blocks of that same color that I'm using, the purpley red color. And we'll add to those shadows as we go. I'm also adding the shadows that are inherent to the fruit themselves, the shadow that you see on the underside. So I'm using the same color to paint in those darker areas on my lemons. As you can see, I've left quite a bit of white space, and the white of your page, your canvas, or your paper is really going to be important to withhold. You don't want to lose all of that because there's nothing that can be more luminous in a painting than the white of the page. And even if it means you do a thin wash of color over top, you don't want to necessarily cover up your whole canvas with full thick paint because you get some beautiful transparent qualities coming through when you leave some indication of that white surface. Another way you can achieve that is to actually pull up some of the paint you've already put down. As you see here, I've just taken a regular paper towel, but you could use a rag too, or any kind of cloth. And while the paint is still wet, you can pull up some of the marks you've made, and you'll see that you're left with that stained white surface that has a beautiful luminous quality to it. And it's really that push and pull of thick versus transparent that you want to try to grasp onto to have a dynamic, varied canvas. Okay, so we have our basic forms laid in here. And I'm just kind of searching my eye around to see what comes next. Painting is always a kind of give and take of lots of little decisions that you have to make using, calculated decision-making skills once you have some background in art, but also a true sense of intuition too. You have to just trust your eye and your heart in some senses to make your next move. And I want these lemons to pop off from the page as they are doing in my kitchen. They're like the brightest thing I see. So to act as a background, I want to do something really dark, because when you see something really dark in a background, it's going to bring forward what you have in your foreground. So I decided to add sort of a cooler blue to our background purple, while the sketches of the lemons are in kind of that warmer reddish purple. And, you know, the painting is going to evolve, so don't be too precious. Don't worry too much about making the perfect mark every time. You can always readjust as you go. Painting is, again, it's a push and pull. And I'm actually neutralizing the purple right now as I get in under those shadows, those cast shadows. And by neutralizing, I mean taking the pigment, the purple, and making it closer to gray. There's a lot of vibrancy in this painting, and I want to kind of calm it down a bit, especially in the parts like the shadows and the background that I don't want to be the focus. I want the lemons to be the focus. So to neutralize a color, you really want to mix basically its opposite. And the opposite of purple is a yellow. It's the opposite color on the color wheel. So I've mixed in a little bit of yellow ochre when I was doing those neutralized purple shadows. Yellow ochre is going to calm down the purple. Okay, so here's the fun part. We're getting into adding in our actual yellow of our lemons. And I mixed up pretty much pure lemon yellow from the tube with a tiny bit of white to brighten it, just a tiny bit. And I just went in with pretty gloppy, thick brush strokes. Again, you can't be too precious. You want to just react and try to capture an impression of what you see. My underpainting had really thin lines, so I'm letting these yellow lines carry a little bit more weight to capture the bulk of that juicy lemon. So I'm making some big thick lines and also some little marks to fill in some of those more like little details that you see on the form. And as I'm going along, I'm trying to lighten up the yellow as I get to the tops of the forms, because as you saw, the light is pouring in from my kitchen windows, so it's hitting the top of the lemons and not hitting the bottom of them where they touch the wooden surface. So the whiter yellow is going across the top and hitting some little spots throughout, and the darker, more neutralized yellows are going to be along the bottom of the form, and I'll be mixing those up in a second. But right now I'm working on brightening up the top edge. And notice that for contrast, I am keeping in some of those purple underpainting lines. They add a nice contrast because they are completely different color, they're painted much thinner, and they shine through to give us a sense of the form and working kind of in partnership with the thicker, creamier yellows that are coming on top. And by the way, I've used the same brush the whole time. It's a size 8 watercolor brush. And I am going to incorporate one other brush that's a little bit smaller for some of the finer details. As I mentioned, I want to add some more neutralized yellows to the bottom edge of these forms because they are not capturing the daylight the same way as the top of the lemons. So again, like I said with the opposite colors, now I'm going the other way. I want my yellow to be neutralized. So of course we know that the opposite of yellow, as we learned just a minute ago, is purple. So I'm going to mix some purple into my yellow, and as you can see there, I'm getting a more like mustard color yellow, and that's going to give us a sense of the roundness of the forms and how far away those bottom sections are from the light of the day. Mixing up another version of that neutralized yellow and going in and adding it just in little spots. I'm thinking quickly and I'm acting quickly, and actually that freshness is a really good thing when you're painting. Painting can be overworked pretty quickly if you're too worried about perfection with each single mark you make. You have to keep a freshness, or at least I would recommend you keep a quick hand and a kind of intuitive quality to your marks. Okay, looking pretty good. The forms are becoming sort of round. And for a little bit of energy, I'm going in and making little tiny details, because when I look at that lemon, I see pretty much a massive yellow, but I also see little details here and there, little bits of pith and a little bit of variety. So we want to give our eye some places to explore. Now that the paint has dried a tiny bit, I realized that the top edge could use even some more brightness, so I went in with that swath of really white lemon yellow. Cool. Okay, so now our last step is to add a background to make those lemons pop out even further. And I used my intuition to decide on a kind of periwinkle blue to capture the spirit of a nice, bright, sunny Sunday, which we are blessed with today. And I got a really super wet brush, and I actually changed my brush. I started using a flat brush for the background to, just go in with big swaths of paint. But, don't worry, if you only have one brush, that's totally fine. I could have done the background with the same brush. I just wanted to mix it up. And I'm going to keep that sort of feeling of like a thicker background that's filled in quickly. And I personally really like the quality of a painting where the edges are a little loose in contrast to the more detailed forms in the foreground. It helps us know where to focus. And I want to keep that background that way, kind of loose, fresh. And now that we know our background is blue, I'm just adding the final touches of some little lighter blue highlights on those lemons that would have been reflecting the light from the blue wall. And by the way, I made up that blue wall. I invented that. There's not an actual blue wall behind me. So take your artistic liberties as you see fit. And pretty much there we have it. I hope you enjoyed the process of making your own still life painting.